Greetings, scholars. It is I, David, your mind mechanic. It is the morning rush, coming to you from Mobile Studio TH, from the rolling green hills of west central Missouri, where the air is fair and the pollen is everywhere. I have a yellow-green film all over my car. It's just Jim Dandy and lovely. I hope everyone is doing well. So, I'm always reading stuff and I'm always trying to, consume information about mental health and mental illness and all that fun stuff. And I thought I would address something. Now, what am I, and I'm making a short comment about something I may make a longer video on, but let me just initially start with, let me tell you my philosophy as a therapist. So, I have all of my little mantras. I have all of my, I have all of my little things that I say, things that I believe in, and things that I try and, from my theoretical framework as a psychotherapist and what I believe works with people. I've got all my stuff, right? And one of my things, this is just one of many things, but one of my things is that I believe in neuroplasticity, and I want to say rapid neuroplasticity, which is to say, I believe in the brain's ability to quickly and rapidly make changes, and for the better. Someone comes into my office and they're not doing well. I believe that someone can come in and make quick work of therapy, more often than not. Now, there's exceptions to this. I'm not going to get into all that. But I just believe that it's possible. So it's not that that's my expectation, but I believe that it's possible. I believe that you can do this. So that's one of my, I would say, core beliefs, right? Now, given that that's what I believe, there's a couple other little things that I then want to address. So what I want to address today, I really want to address this idea of chemical imbalances. So there's this idea out there, and I once believed in this. I want everybody to know. And this may be a hard video for some people. So I want to, don't shut me off yet. Don't stop the video yet. Because I have a little bit of a disclaimer / qualifier I want to say in this before I get into the meat and potatoes of the whole chemical imbalance thing. I'm going to first state that there is such a thing as, if you want to call it that, we wouldn't call it that in the field. I'm not going to bore you with, again, technical jargon, but there is a thing that, for lack of a better way to put it, is a chemical imbalance. And I will give you an example. Let's see. In men or women, if what are known as sex hormones get greatly out of balance, that can cause mood issues and thinking issues and all of that. And we would say that there is very much like a chemical, like a hormonal imbalance, and that's a real thing. That stuff's real. If you have endocrine issues, which is to say you have a hypothyroidism or an adrenal issue. I would even go so far as to say if you have some metabolic dysfunction, all these things, if you have iron deficiency, all these things can cause mood issues, thinking issues. You'll be foggy, fuzzy, grumpy. You'll have low energy. These are all very real things. And if, like I say, for lack of a better way to put it, if you want to call that a chemical imbalance, I won't disagree with you. But we're going to venture off that for a little bit because that's not everybody's experience. So we're going to take an otherwise healthy individual. So we're going to take, let's see, we're going to take, I don't know, well, we could take me, or we could take someone like me. It can just be a generic person, but a person that, so let me give you a scenario. I'll give you a real one. I'll do it anonymously, but let me give you a real scenario. Someone in their mid-30s who they exercise pretty regularly. They have no medical issues, none. So they're not deficient in anything. They have no glandular endocrine issues. There's just nothing going on with them physically. If you were to run every test, there's nothing happening. So you take, what we call an otherwise healthy individual, and we're also going to take someone that they like their job, or they love their job, their spouse, male or female, doesn't matter, their spouse is fantastic, maybe they have kids and the kids are good, money's good. So everything, for lack of a better way to look at it, is just good, right? And that person will show up in my office. And so there's a question. There's a couple questions. And sometimes these questions come from the patient. And a couple of questions that usually come from me is, do you have any health issues? Now, as a psychotherapist, I personally was trained to try and consider the whole person. I'm always big on things that are, relatively speaking anyway, I mean, getting in the habit of stuff is hard, but in terms of low cost, non-invasive, non-medicated things to do, adjust diet and exercise, it's always a good thing. Get outside, move around, live as active a lifestyle as possible, things like that. So I look at that stuff. I look at the body. I encourage people to go get blood work done to rule out metabolic issues, to rule out hormones, because the first thing I can tell you is that if any of that is going on, it makes therapy difficult, if not impossible. Because if you genuinely have something that would be in that, as we're going to call it here, chemical imbalance bucket, you have a genuine hormonal dysfunction that, like, a symptom of that dysfunction is like hypothyroidism. If you've got underactive thyroid, now that can be indicative of larger problems as well. That can be indicative of metabolic issues as well. But my point is, if those medical issues are not treated in some way, shape, or form, therapy is pretty much pointless, because we're pushing against physical stuff, medical stuff that it doesn't, if you're low on iron, you're not getting quite as much oxygen, and you're not going to think clearly, and you can feel depressed. Or if you have low vitamin D, depression, anxiety, lack of motivation are symptoms. And until you treat the vitamin D or the hypothyroidism or whatever it is, we would call this treatment-resistant symptoms, and we're basically pushing against a brick wall. That's the reality. Now, let's say, though, that, again, we get this patient in my office, and we do all the blood work, and there's nothing wrong with them physically. We can't find anything. So, again, I have questions, but one of the questions sometimes that patients ask is, do I have a chemical imbalance? And this is where, again, we're getting to the hard part for some folks. This is where we get to a little bit of a sticky wicket for some, which is to say, we get to a hard spot for people to accept and process. But I've always been honest with y'all, scholars, and like I say, chemical imbalances, and I gave you a short list of stuff that can go on that's absolutely going to cause an issue. Now, chemical imbalance, right? That's the question of the day. Do I have one? It's a term that's been thrown around for years. Is that a thing? Well, and I know that people are going to say, well, you're not a medical doctor. You can't substitute your judgment for theirs. Yeah, maybe. But a lot of those idiots are saying that there's this chemical imbalance thing when there's nothing really physically wrong with the person. I'm not going to go all Tom Cruise on everyone and just say that, hey, we can just fix everything with diet and exercise and vitamins. That's not necessarily the case. But I will also say it's not necessarily the case that someone comes into my office that I'm going to immediately recommend that they go to a doctor, psychiatrist or otherwise. Psychiatrist is the mental health professional that typically prescribes antidepressants and things. I'm not necessarily going to recommend that they go do that. And, you know, if they're asking me, do I have a chemical imbalance? Well, here's the funny part. The medical doctors can't tell you that anyway. So if you're healthy, so I want you to hear me on this, scholars. If you've made it like 12 minutes into this video, please hear me. We don't have a blood test to know that your serotonin is off. We don't have, like, in terms of what's going on in the brain, we have no way to know what your serotonin level in the brain is. We have no way to know what your dopamine level in the brain is. We have no way of knowing. And if I'm just telling you, I work with doctors who they don't like to do video. I wish I could get them on here because they would categorically agree with me. And I'm talking about psychiatrists, the mental health people that prescribe medicine. So, we don't know. So if any doctor tells you that, oh, you've got a chemical imbalance, probably not accurate. We don't know. We have no way of knowing that. There's no scan right now that lets us know. And it is not to say that there's nothing going on with you. I want everyone to know this. Your thoughts and feelings are real. If you're feeling depressed, then you're feeling depressed. I would never argue that, ever. But that doesn't mean that there's a chemical imbalance. So, again, we can't test for it. It's hard to, so then it's hard to say. Really hard to say. I mean, think about that. Like, doctors, there's plenty of doctors that would be pretty irritated if someone starts going off saying, oh, you have this wrong. Well, did you run a test? But then these same doctors will say, well, you have a chemical imbalance. Well, we don't know. We just don't know. So, I know I haven't necessarily said straight up yes or no yet. Is there a chemical imbalance? Yes or no? As I've already said, the truth is that we don't know. And I think my big point here is if you're an otherwise healthy individual, and this is really the hard part here for a lot of folks, scholars. A lot of folks do not want to hear what I'm about to say. I know I've been saying that, but I'm just going to tell you straight up. If you're an otherwise healthy individual and you don't really have anything physically going on or not enough of anything to really contribute to not being able to control your thoughts and feelings, to where the anxiety and depressive stuff, among others, is not under your control at all, then, well, I'm not sure I believe that there is a chemical imbalance then. And this doesn't just come from a vacuum. This isn't created in a vacuum. This is education, experience, that I'm, in research that I'm trying to draw my conclusion from. And, there it is. Now, what are the implications of this? One of the big reasons that I'm saying all this to all of you scholars, if you've made it this far in the video, and my phone ran out of memory a few days ago, and I wasn't able to finish this video. So if you're watching this rather than listening, there's a break in the video, and you may notice that I have something on my forehead, and it's poison ivy. I acquired poison ivy and got it on my forehead. Isn't that lovely? So I apologize. It'll be good entertainment in the video, I suppose. So, again, what are the implications of this, scholars? What are the implications of there not necessarily... Let's say I'm right. Just be a scientist about this and hypothesize with me. What does it mean... Oopsie daisies. Drop the phone. What does it mean if there is no such thing as a chemical imbalance within the framework that you just heard? What if there isn't? What does that mean? What does that mean for someone with anxiety or depression systems? Like I say, there's a couple of mental health issues that I'm not sure I would put on the list. I'm just talking about general anxiety, general depression stuff. General anything for the most part, but definitely the anxiety and depression. Your general mood disorders. What if there isn't such a thing as a chemical imbalance? What does that mean? Well, goes down to this whole choice theory idea. So I'm going to tell you what I was taught. I'm going to keep it nice and simple. Like he's no longer with us, Dr. R. Chris Martin, whiz-bang psychologist, mad genius, a psychologist that you've never even heard of, the good doctor, brilliant man. He had a very simple take on things. How he looked at it was decrease negatives versus increase positives. There's a lot of reasons for that, and this video's been going on for a bit, so that's probably another topic for another time, to resurrect the annals of motivational psychology from Dr. Martin. I might do that sometime, but right now, let's just keep it very simple. If we make an effort to decrease negatives in our life, and I'm not saying this is easy. This is not easy. None of this is easy. But if we make an effort to decrease negatives, so if we make an effort to eliminate stupid relationships, if we make an effort to try and behave in a positive manner, which is not being fake happy, it's just trying not to take our stuff out on people. It's making an effort to be productive in spite of where we're at. And again, not easy, but we're at least trying. And again, decrease negatives versus increase positives. You can do increase positives, but we want to decrease the negatives first, because what you might find is if you can decrease negatives, positives may increase by default. If we can have a better understanding of why we're feeling what we're feeling and thinking what we're thinking, if we can understand that better, and it's very simply, and this is very much where I hang out from the motivation perspective, which is, why are we doing anything we're doing, whether it's thinking or feeling? What drives this anxiety? What drives this depression? You think there's nothing to it. I'm just going to tell you, scholars, this is anecdotal. I can't back this up. However, just in working with people, if there's no, quote unquote chemical imbalance to deal with, so if there's no endocrine issues, if there's, nothing physically wrong, I've yet to have a patient that didn't have something in life that is bogging them down and that they're letting bother them. That I haven't encountered this yet. You could argue with me all you want, but I just haven't seen it. And this isn't me. I'm just telling you, this isn't me dreaming something up, some sort of conclusion. That's not what's happening here. This is just very simply, when I work with people, there's always something. There's always something bothering people. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in there. Like I say, if all the physical stuff's gone. Now, I've had cases where I talked with them a couple times, and I'm like, you know what? I don't know that there's anything wrong with you at all, except vitamin D deficiency has been a big thing lately, but I digress. But I only say that because plenty of times people have come in, they get that fixed, and then they're never in my office again. Why? Because there wasn't anything wrong with them to begin with. Literally nothing except vitamin D deficiency or hypothyroid or whatever it is. Again, it's an issue. But why? Why do we get in these mood states? I'm not even going to try to answer all that right now, but I think I'm just making the case that we, in the end, for the most part, so more often than not, we have a choice. And not in every case, but more often than not, we have a choice. Yes, there's exceptions. Don't send me hate mail. Send me a good counter response that is thought out. Present your evidence. I'll listen. But I'm just saying, scholars, there's a lot of choice involved in our mental and emotional health. There's a lot of choice involved in getting from the bad spot to the good spot. There's a lot of choice involved in getting from the good spot to the bad spot, too. There's a lot that we let drive, and I'm being very picky with my words, that we let drive our emotions. There's a lot there. And it'll get us to the bad spot if we let it. But we don't have to hang out there if we don't want to. So I hope this video and audio was worthwhile to you. If it was, give it a like in whatever format you're listening to on here. And as always, if you have some video, audio ideas, you have some content ideas for me, shoot me a message. All my contact information should be around you in a description somewhere. And I hope to see you all around on the socials. Again, if you ever need anything, let me know. Have a good one.